Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dynamic Torah podcast. This is episode 8, and in this episode, we discuss the influence of the Torah on the founding of America, how the Torah impacted the founding fathers and their writings, whether it's the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and a whole lot more. Then we discuss the interplay between a people's culture and its value system, how behavior is a reflection of a people's value, and that in turn is how it affects the culture of the people as well, the ethos, one might say. Last but not least, in order to really emphasize this point, my father and I discussed two Midrashim. The first Midrash is a very famous one where HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes around to all the nations of the world at the time and offers them the Torah, the Aseh Diberot, because they complained, why weren't we offered the Torah? And God offers them the Torah, and we see what the responses are and how important and how deep this Midrash really is. The second Midrash we discuss has to do with how the daughters of Midian, Benot Midian, at the end of last week's parasha, Parashat Balak, how they were able to seduce the Israelites after Bilam failed in cursing them. So, get ready for a very deep episode, an episode full of insight, and enjoy the show. Episode 8, welcome back to the Dynamic Torah podcast. We've had quite a weekend, we've had quite a week, covering a lot of different topics. We've had some conversations off the recordings, and I think we're in for a treat this week regarding some of the topics we're going to cover, some of which is going to include the 250th anniversary since the declaration of the United States, and other fun topics covering some Midrashim by Chazal. So, take it away.
This Shabbat, it happens to be July 4th. We definitely should acknowledge and be grateful to this country that gave us enormous, and still continues to give us enormous opportunities, freedoms, protection. Now, especially with the current president, who has been truly the greatest supporter and friend of Am Yisrael, both in America as well as in Israel. We should always be grateful for this. We should never, ever take it for granted. Throughout the course of our history, there were rulers who were very good to Am Yisrael, and many, many who were not, unfortunately. What is it about this country that truly makes it so special? The founding of this country is the key. We spoke about this a while ago, that the values, the core values of what this country is built on, come from the Torah. It comes from narratives in the Torah that we're able to extract the moral lessons and the values and the teachings that God is really disseminating throughout the world in its written form. Freedoms, freedom of thought, freedom of faith, freedom to express oneself, intelligence, one's right to defend themselves even, people's right to elect those who they deem that they can govern over them, even boundaries of each of the branches of this country. There's boundaries within the Constitution itself. It stipulates what each branch is supposed to do. It can't go beyond that. In its own Constitution, it says this. All men are created equal. This is Tzelem Elohim, clearly comes from. Endowed by their Creator. Even on every legal currency of this country, there's a statement, "In God we trust." Even in Israel, they don't have anything on their currency. Maybe one day they'll have B'si'ata dishmaya, Baruch Hashem. Okay?
In the top left
Maybe,
corner,
maybe.
top right corner.
Maybe, or something, I don't know. A pasuk, no, because then it would be a problem.
Yeah.
But this country has it, in God we trust. What was this idea that the founders had in mind? Is when we say in God we trust in this country, of course it's, God is the ruler, God is the king, and not the king is God. That's number one. And in God we trust basically means that we don't trust the government. Once you trust the government, they become God. In God we trust means there is a law above the government. There is a moral universal code and an authority who is God, who is Adonai, the God of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, who is above government. And that our rights and our existence do not come from the state and the government. They come from God. This is what was totally opposing between America and Europe. Whereas in Europe, for centuries, and way, way, way before, there was a France and a Germany and a Spain, you had different empires as well as different tribes throughout the continent, that the king, the ruler, was a god, was divine. He is the physical embodiment of the spiritual God they believe in, as well as he is the physical embodiment of how the will of their God, quote unquote, is supposed to play out through the behavior of that God. Of that king. And no one can question. Nobody. The king is infallible. The king cannot even think wrong besides do wrong. So we have to understand that the whole dichotomy that the Pilgrims and later on the settlers had and then the founding fathers had, they were completely opposing the core fundamentals of all of Europe. In order for them to be able to have that type of a system, be it in a land that's so large as America is, or be it even in a small town, they had to get the hell away from Europe. There was no possible opportunity for an America with those values to ever be in Europe. No way. This is so key and fundamental to really emphasize and be grateful for. And an example, prior to the declaration, and the actual founding fathers who later on would be part of the whole composition of the Constitution, even before, the Pilgrims who came in 1621.
1620. 1619. Right? Because you have the 1619 project that tries to...
With Plymouth Rock.
Yeah. The Magna Carta.
All those people that came were people that believed in the Bible and wanted to have a different type of a life.
If I'm not mistaken, the Pilgrims viewed themselves as
I'll get to that.
Children of Israel, right?
Yeah. Touching on that point, the first idea of the seal of America was first drawn by Benjamin Franklin. And what does it depict? It depicts the crossing of the Sea of Reeds.
Yam Suf.
How so? You see that in the sea, there's a chariot with clearly representing Pharaoh with a sword, and his army around him, that's drowning. And on the other side, there's land, and you see a people there, and there's a person in front who represents Moshe. And in the middle, you see a pillar of fire, which represents God. And around the seal, around it, it says obedience to God is, what's the quote?
Here, I'm going to pull it up right now.
Obedience to God is blank.
Rebellion to tyrants.
Right.
Rebellion to tyrants
Obedience
is
to God.
obedience to God.
Right, beautiful. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. That quote really stems from the Maccabees, from the book of the Maccabees. They're the first ones,
Oh, really?
by the way, to really lead a rebellion against a tyrant as a group.
And by rebellion, you mean to truly fight back?
Yeah.
And
And
after
challenge not the governorship, for example, of the state or the king, but to challenge the claim that the king is divine. The king can do whatever he wants. No, you cannot. You are not God. It wasn't, there was other seals. Eventually, we have the ones that we have.
Right.
But that was really one of the first ones that was proposed, and it was by Benjamin Franklin, which is absolutely brilliant. Another thing that you have on the Liberty Bell, it's a quote from the book of Vayikra. Ukratendero ba'aretz, you shall declare liberty throughout the entire land. Liberty, liberty. These concepts really are the core values of this country. American pop culture has nothing to do with America. Absolutely nothing. It negates all the core values of America. It negates the fact that God is Lord.
Supreme.
That God gave a mandate to humanity to live by. And it's eroding our country, unfortunately. It really is eroding our country. So, going back to the Pilgrims and eventually later on to the Founding Fathers, we mentioned this, that a lot of the preaching in the churches was about these themes. Freedom. Really. This is what they were talking about. Interestingly enough, there are 13 colonies in America. It's not a coincidence. Those 13 colonies represent the 13 tribes of Israel, because the early settlers believed that they are the new Hebrews in the promised land also. So they viewed themselves as the character of the nation of Israel, who was oppressed by a tyrant, who was overly taxed, who was taken advantage, trying to escape, crying out to God, leading them out of their Egypt, oppression, crossing the sea, protecting them, reaching the promised land, and settling there, eventually with 13 colonies representing the 13 tribes of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people. It's not a coincidence. It's all by design. So many of the early towns, till today, they all have Hebrew names.
Yeah.
Hebrew names. Yeah, because they viewed their situation and existence through the Hebrew lens, through the biblical lens. That's how they saw themselves. Another example, what is the first book that was published in America? What's the first English book published in America?
It wasn't the Bible?
No. It was a translation of the book of Psalms. It was called the Palm Bay Psalms, published in the year 1640. Why? What's the purpose of it? In order for it to be used in the churches so they can sing and praise God, as well as learn the values from it. Today there are, I think, like 11 copies. A few years ago, it was a copy in Sotheby's was sold for like $14 million.
Oh, wow.
Because it's very rare. Only 1,700s were published and only 11 are extant copies. Fascinating. Again, but it wasn't capitalism or government or no.
It wasn't New Testament either.
No.
That's a fascinating point.
They did not relate to the gospel.
So I want to go on that point more.
They did take cross-referenced messages that the gospel has that can also be seen in the Torah. That's fine. But as a core, no, they didn't, because they understood that what does the gospel really do? The gospel comes to take the place of the Hebrew Bible, the direct word of God to humanity. The gospel is not the direct word of God. It's not even the indirect word of God, because nowhere in the gospel does it ever say, and the Lord spoke to Jesus. Nowhere.
Really?
Yes. So they only took the points that relate to the Tanakh, to the Torah in particular, and might have quoted Matthew or here and there. And as a matter of fact, most people don't know this, but there are a number of ideas and references and messages that the gospel has, the early gospel. I'm not talking about the later one that was written by Roman authors. I'm talking about the early disciples who were really all Jewish. A lot of messages that is contained in the gospel in their verses, you'll find them also in the Talmud, the Mishnah, Pirkei Avot. A lot of references. The Pharisees, a lot of their ideas. It makes total sense. They're living in the same time.
There's no issue with that?
That's not the point. I'm not talking about the faith aspect. I'm talking about the behavioral aspect of how to treat others.
Okay.
Ben Adam lechavero.
Sure, okay.
Okay? There's, yeah. Keep in mind, they were Jewish. Where are they getting their teachings from? Not Rome. Okay? Not Paul. Paul has nothing to do with those early disciples. He never met Jesus. He didn't even speak any Hebrew. Most likely, based on his faith and psyche of how he viewed the world and all that, it's very likely his parents were pagans. He resembles more paganism in Rome than the early disciples of Jesus, or even Jesus himself. Okay. What later on became of Jesus is a different story. That's later on the church, fine. Mm-hmm. But if you read through it, you see that really there are certain things there that are identical to what we say. Okay? So this is something, again, that why is it important? Because unfortunately, a lot of the values of our country it's eroding, especially in big cities in America. The education system is horrendous, especially when it comes to the values of this country and being part of our country. They're teaching, in different curriculums teach this whole idea of guilt, of how terrible the founding fathers were. They owned slaves. Well, guess what? 99% of the world population was a slave for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It was not based on racism. It was based on economics. Okay? You needed labor, so either you hired or you bought them. That was throughout the entire world. And Africa, the continent, was not the only continent that had slavery. Europe had slavery. Asia has slavery. Okay? The question is, how did each one eventually break that trend? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank God, because of the Torah,
right,
it broke the trend. Right. Because of how the Torah tells you how to treat a person that that he's your servant. And the whole idea of a servant is that he does labor for you. You cannot do whatever you want with that individual. And the Torah has many pisukim about that, as well as Jewish law tells us how to treat somebody that actually works under you. Okay? So why am I getting to all this? Because America, ultimately, what makes this country different than other countries is the culture of the country. A culture of a country really is the core values of who they are. how it plays out of who they are, well, we can see their laws, their justice system, their how they run how things are run in the country, how do they conduct in business, how do they conduct in their daily relations with one another, what is their educational system. That is how eventually those core fundamentals play out. Now, a question. Why is it the Torah speaks to certain people, as well as the Torah also doesn't speak to certain people?
I mean, the idea of prophecy, you're saying?
No.
Speaks to or speaks about?
Speaks to people. Why is it that some people can relate to the Torah and some people cannot relate to it?
Oh, that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
but it's
okay.
saying really the Torah is speaking.
I understand. I understand
Yes.
the question. Why?
Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is, ultimately, I think a big part of it's going to be value system and perception.
That tree that you have from before, you have certain elements that later on the Torah amplifies. And you say, I understand it. I see the vision of what God wants from us. And there's more going around those core basic values. And the truth of the matter is, if we really break things down when it comes to societal matters of how we conduct ourselves with each other, there's really very, very, very few fundamental core points that make us have a good society. It's not hundreds. It's really not. It's really in the single digits.
Like it can be distilled into different buckets.
Single digits. And I'm gonna demonstrate this with something that I'm gonna read a little later in a moment. Okay. So why is it that, for example, the founding fathers and the Pilgrims and those individuals who want to have a different type of a continent, not a Europe, the Torah spoke to them? Yes. Because they had those values, and now they want to implement those values according to how the Bible says of how we're going to do this. There was actually in the early settlers, there was I forgot what state it was, maybe Pennsylvania, I'm not sure, that for a very short period of time actually implemented the justice system of the written text of the Torah.
Yeah, look it up right now.
Okay, which is, again, very fascinating. Another thing to consider. The founding fathers, yes, they were religious people, quote unquote, but they did not look at the Torah strictly through a religious lens. They looked at the Torah very similar to how we view the Torah. That it's the guiding principle of how you're going to deal with mundane issues on a daily basis, which is law. Okay? And God / the law, really, is above everybody. Okay? So later on, when you have this whole idea, I believe it was Jefferson who said debated the whole topic of the division between church and state. Key here. It was never ever proposed the division between God and state. That no.
Right, because if I'm not
God
mistaken,
is above the state.
if I'm not mistaken, originally I think in the capital there was a place of worship, correct? And they would have
Yes.
Sunday sermon, Sunday
Yes.
worship there, right?
Also.
Before it became like, you have to split
Yes.
everything. Everything has to be segregated.
So
Sure.
the division between church and state is the English church and the state. That is what they're talking about.
So-
because the church had enormous power.
Right. So go more in that. What was so bad about the English church? I mean, obviously we know the history, but why specifically the church and not the king, right? I mean, yes, if I'm not mistaken, in England the Pope was the king, right? According to their,
No.
or it's separate.
No, no.
It's separated.
It's separated. What was important for the political and the religious establishments is that we get along.
Mhm.
The one who had more power on the minds of the people was the church, more than the king. Yes, military brute force, the king, clearly, because it's understandable. But the ones who were able to sway the people and to really control their minds was always the church. Ideas, faith, good, evil, superstitions, fear, all that, the church. The king, who was smart, was in cahoots with the church. We'll control the masses, but we'll split the power. There were some kings who didn't like that, who rebelled, and they had a lot of mess with the church, and vice versa sometimes.
Right.
But in general, that was like an understanding. In order for us to be able to rule the people and control them so they don't revolt against either branch, either one, let's work it together.
Okay.
Okay? The church allowed the king to get away with a lot, clearly, and the king allowed the pope to get away with a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
corruption galore in both, absolutely. And this is something that it wasn't European per se. It started way back from ancient civilizations when paganism sprung forth, that the king, for example, in Babylonia, Mesopotamia, in Egypt, the king was also the high priest. Hence he's divine. Hence he has ultimate absolute power. Okay? In the Torah, he's represented as Paro.
Right.
But prior to Egypt, it was really Mesopotamia.
Right.
Okay? Which is interesting, because early civilizations, when they started, early ones, it wasn't really like that. It was more like a social cohesion among the people, that we do things collectively. Later on, when civilization started to have more people within its own boundaries, you needed a central government because of so many different situations and economies and people and foreigners and legal cases. So how do we do this? There has to be a source of power, the ruler, who is also, not only divine, but he's also the high priest. Okay. But back to the Church of Europe. Unfortunately, its history is very ugly, very dark. Unfortunately, and that is the whole idea of the settlers and the pilgrims eventually that came here to escape that, to get out of this. If I'm not mistaken, in the 1650s, early 1650s, or the late 1640s, I can't remember the year, maybe 1647, you have the first Jews coming to America. They escaped from Brazil. They escaped the persecution that was going on there, I believe, by the Portuguese, because Brazil at that point was under the Dutch colony, that they allowed them to live there, but then when the Portuguese came and there was wars, they dominated. So those 23 Jews, eventually they come on a little ship, and they settle in New York City, which was New Amsterdam. That is the first Sephardim, the first Jews of the Sephardim, and eventually, slowly, their communities grew. Rhode Island, of course, and they were very successful. Okay? So, why again am I touching upon this? Because ultimately, what is the Torah? Saadia Gaon translates Torah Shebechtav, the written law, one word, Adab. The word Adab means culture. How does that Adab culture play out? That's oral law. That's Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's the oral tradition of that people. Halacha.
Halacha, sure. I
Okay?
was going to say, right.
But the essence of who the people really are, their true values, their narrative that structured who they are, that's the culture. That's the Torah Shebechtav. That's the scripture. Okay.
So on that point, and I think it's worth reiterating something that we've mentioned in prior episodes. Before, and it kind of ties back to the idea you're saying about how values of a people and the culture can be distilled into a few categories at best, right? Or not hundreds and hundreds. In order to get to that point, it's refined and orally discussed and debated and discussed until you get to the point of writing the book, right? And this is something that we mentioned in prior podcasts, that until the Jews had to go through the 40 years in order to get the end result of the Torah, right? So the same thing with the values. In order to get to that end result of what the values should be, you need to really distill it and debate it and contemplate and think it through until you get to that end point conclusion of, this is
Not only think it through, live it through. Live it through. Because the narratives prior to the giving of the Torah, it's how did humans conduct themselves? With no official Torah, per se. There was no written law. There was no authentic oral tradition that was given at Sinai. There were certain individuals who were able to bring down God's will, Adam being the first one, and a certain different behavioral code. Again, what is ultimately values? It's a code of behavior. So our code of behavior comes from Adonai, comes from God. How? Ask those people who claim they got it. Olam haba. I don't know how. But why do we say that? Why is it that, if you take it a step further, why is it that we Jewish people, as well as others, say that the moral code that we live by comes from God? You know why? Ultimately, in order for no one to say I'm God, in order for no one to say I'm the one who knows better than you, or than God. Well, you can't do that. No. There are 8 billion people on this planet. If each one is going to say, I have a better code, or I know what, or I know this, or I know, when it comes to human behavior of how we're supposed to relate to each other properly or not, what is good and evil, what is right and wrong, what is immoral and moral is, you have 8 billion people. How are you going to know? How are you going to do? Okay, so let's say we're going to have 5 major sects. Which one is that? Whenever we, by the way, we have a problem because very often we use the word theology. Whenever you say the word theology, which is the study of God, you're basically saying anybody can say whatever they want about God. Ultimately. Why? Because we have a panel of 5 theologians. Why? Who can say, well, this one is right, this one is right, this one is wrong, this one is wrong? Who? If they're talking about God, we're talking about what he claims, not what he says in the Torah. When you take the Torah out of that equation, anything goes. Anything and anyone can become God.
Okay, so...
And anybody can make up their own quote-unquote divine code. Hence, kings were viewed as gods.
Okay, so now that's a very deep point, and that's something worth going more into, and maybe you'll touch on it afterwards, but each group claims that according to their text, God said X to them. So each of them have, so to speak, a claim or a portion of the debate, don't they? Because they're claiming that God gave them a book of some sort and it got to their hands and this is what they're living by. And I mean, ultimately it resulted in hundreds if not thousands of years of war between different cultures, between different religions, persecutions, pogroms, inquisitions.
By default, that's not God.
Okay, why not? Because
any time where there's evil, anything that has to do with evil has nothing to do with the God of the Torah. Nothing. No, not only this, you're touching upon a point of, for example, Islam and Christianity. Nowhere does it ever say anywhere again that God spoke to Jesus or to one of the disciples. Nowhere. Period. I'm sorry to say, it is definitely a haughty type of an attitude to say, Jesus doesn't even need to speak to God to know what God wants. Really?
But
Well, he's the physical embodiment of Israel. Then what makes him different than Pharaoh? What makes him different than Caesar? All emperors were the physical embodiment of their God and their will. So what makes him different? That's one. Two, Islam, nowhere does it say that Allah spoke to Muhammad. Whatever they want to have their little narrative story of how so-called the Quran was given to Muhammad by an angel of Gabriel in some cave, and later on, you can say whatever you want. Was this done in public? Anybody seen it? Can anybody say, yeah, our ancestors were there and I'm part of that tradition? Say what you want of the Quran. Is it decent? Does it say to treat everybody equally? Or does it discriminate? Telling you that if someone who doesn't agree with Muhammad, forget Allah, with Muhammad, if anyone doesn't accept the fact that he is God's emissary, he's an apostate and you're supposed to kill him. It's a mitzvah to kill that person who does not believe in Muhammad's emissary. What? What do we even, that can't be from Allah. How can that be? And by the way, who says that Muhammad was sent by Allah, and who says that Muhammad is God's emissary? You know who says? Muhammad. Anyone with a clear mind, objective. It's like, this doesn't sound right.
I mean, this is what you're going through right now. You're really dissecting according to the Kuzari and how Rabbi Halevi dissects it in his book.
Yeah, but I'm going a little further when it comes to their with more of their faith.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't believe whatever you want. Hindu, believe whatever you want. It doesn't matter for me. I really don't. It doesn't bother me what people believe in. It doesn't bother me who people have trust in. It really doesn't bother me when it comes to them saying a divine being. No problem. How does that divine being tell you to treat yourselves and others?
So that's really...
That is the key. Mm-hmm. That's the main thing. I don't care how you worship that God. I don't care if you pray 5 times a day, you pray once time. I don't care what you eat. It doesn't make a difference. I don't care what days your Sabbath. It doesn't make a difference. I don't care your holiday. It makes no difference to me. That all is between you and your God. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. You want to, you're comfortable accepting that that's his will. Go ahead. Ultimately, how do you treat other human beings and how do you view them? That is where it really. That is how we should judge it. Not only them, ourselves as well. Ourselves as well. If we look at the book of the prophets, throughout their tenor, right, 80 to 90% of the time, what are they telling the people? You're mistreating one another. Here and there, you have them speaking about people eating some vermin and pig and dog, whatever. And sometimes you have them complaining that the Kohanim are not doing the proper sacrifices in the worship. And sometimes you're having them saying that, oh, you didn't do what the Jubilee thing year says to release all your servants. Or sometimes you don't keep the Shabbat and the holidays. But the bulk of it is justice. How are you treating the other person? Not the rich. How are you treating those who can be mistreated and be taken advantage of? That is what counts the most. That's it. How do I know someone has real faith in God? How do you treat other people? I don't care how many times you pray. I don't even care if you keep Shabbat or not. That's between you and God. But ultimately, if I see that you conduct yourself honestly in business, you keep your word, you're honest, you're reliable, you take care of those who in need, you respect others. It doesn't matter who it is, Jew, non-Jew, irrelevant. You see the other person as, that Tselem Elohim, they're different than me. Yeah, some of them, are not classy people. Fine, they're not classy. They're improperly educated. But ultimately, they're a human being. That person has true belief in God. That's what, good. Seeing how many of the characters in the Torah play out, in the Tanakh play out, really the emphasis is not so much about them being devoted strictly to the ritual aspect between them and God. Not that often. It's mainly the relations with other human beings.
That's a fascinating point.
So this is where I'm getting at now.
Okay.
There's a famous Midrash. We've heard this Midrash many, many times, which I find fascinating. It has to do with before God gives the Torah to the Jewish people, right? So there's this idea that the sages come up with in the Talmud Masechet Avodah Zarah that the nations complain to God. And they say, you play favoritism. You only gave the Torah to the Jewish people, you never offered it to us. And if you offered it to us, we would also accept. What makes them so special? So there's this whole fascinating narrative in the Sugya, in the Talmud,
that's the beginning
that he
of
says, that he says, okay, I'll try you out, I'll test you out. Build a sukkah. I want you to build a sukkah. And really, building a sukkah does not require a lot of money, very little material. You can, if you have a field, you can.
It's very basic.
You don't have to even pay for it if you have the natural resources to do it. Okay, they build a sukkah, and then the Chachamim say, God made the heat of the day like Tammuz, like the month of Tammuz, which is like the hot, really, really hottest time in the land of Israel. Very dry, summer.
Yeah.
And it was very, very hot. And the people said, forget about it. We're not gonna sit in the sukkah. Matter of fact, this sukkah is just dumb, and they just kicked it and just destroyed it. And God says, I give you a very simple mitzvah. You couldn't even handle that. Okay? Again, it's a fascinating midrash. The narrative is fascinating. Based on that, you have other midrashim that are built in the Sifrei, in Deuteronomy, and later in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Then you have the most famous one in Midrash Tanchuma, okay, which is a collection. What are they talking about? When it says in the Chumash that God came from Seir, right, in Vezut Beracha, in the Parashat Vezut Beracha, Mi Seir, he came from Seir. Paran, what does it say that God? It means that the law, the law appeared from Seir. The law came from Har Paran. In other words, what does that mean? So Chachamim make a midrash. Who lives in the land of Seir? Edom, the Edomites. Where is it? It's the southern part of Jordan, we'll call it, that area. Which makes sense. Because where was Midian? Where's Har Sinai? In that northern eastern part of Saudi Arabia, near the southern part of Jordan, by the way. Okay. God went to the Ishmaelim. God went to the Edomites, right? And he says, you want the Torah? Would you like to accept my Torah? And they said, sure. What's inside? Well, it says in it, Lo tirtzah, do not murder. They said, oh, we got a problem with that one. I say, why have a problem with that one? Our ancestor, the founding of our tribe, nation, is Esav. And he was a murderer, he was a killer. And it's like, it's who we are. Okay. Then he goes to Moab, the Moabites, also around the same territory, a little more a little, all this is happening in the same territory. He says to them, would you accept the Torah? You want to accept the Torah? And they said, sure, what's inside? Lutin af. Basically, you can't behave sexually immoral. And they said, oh, we can't accept. Why can't you accept? The founding of our tribe again had to do with incest. Why? Because the the daughters of Lot had relations with their father. That famous story. Then it's in our genes. It's who we really are. Okay. Whoop. So then he goes to the Ishmaelites. Right? And he says, you want the Torah? And they say, sure. What's inside? Lutignov. You cannot steal. He said, ooh, we can't. Our father, our ancestor, was a thief. He came to Israel and he asked them, would you like the Torah? They said, we accept. No questions asked. That is such an amazing Midrash, by the way. I'll tell you why. Of course, the Hamim are inventing and narrating it. They're saying a couple of major points here. They're saying that the essence of a people is their culture. The value system of a people is really what determines how they're going to conduct themselves and how they're going to view reality and behavior. What is right and wrong is not what God says. What is right and wrong is going to stem from their own value system. That is something so deep. No, it really is in the psyche of people. What determines our choices on a daily basis? Our value system.
Some will say hormones, and
that's impulsive. When I say choices, my choice. Should I do this? Should I do that? Is this good? Is this evil? Is this beneficial to me? Is it not beneficial to me? And I can justify any way I want. But what value system am I using to determine that justification, ultimately in that choice? So, of course, they're saying this in another way by saying the only way that nations and people change is if they change their culture. They're also saying that.
Like, as if to say that you have to shed some skin, take a hard look in the mirror, and change, and that change is typically to improve or to become better, or you change by just being passive in the process and just letting the environment affect you, right? Meaning change can happen whether actively or passively. It can happen to us or we can make it happen, right?
Yeah, but when it comes to value systems, which requires education and understanding and learning and passing it on, it's not strictly, I'm just going to be passive and things are going to happen. I got to be engaged. Mm-hmm. That's why in the Torah, in the book of Mishle, great pasuk. No, slicha. Book of Tehillim, we say this. It says, Sur mera va'aseh tov. Yeah, in other words, run away from evil. But that's not enough. Va'aseh tov. You need to do good. You need to do good. And you need to pursue peace. So it's not enough that, I'm just going to sit and not do it. That ain't enough. From the Torah, it's not enough. That's why we have mitzvot aseh and lo ta'aseh. We have the do's and the don'ts. It's a combination of both, that's our value system. Okay? Another thing that they're saying, Chachamim. They are basically exposing who Rome was at their time also. Rome had no problem when it came to killing and murder. No problem. Because it's a caste system. Rome had no problem taking from others. Caste system. Okay? Well, the governor needs some more money. Tax them, take whatever you want. Well, yeah, take. Right? And Rome definitely had no issue with sexual immorality. According to Roman historians and documented, Rome was, at their peak, was the biggest city in the world. There were over 1 million people living in it. At that time, that was unheard of. Okay? And in every street in Rome, okay, there was a bordello. There was a brothel. In every street in Rome, there was a brothel. In addition to other things that they found to be very indulging and had no problem indulging in. So what Chachamim are saying is Rome had those major vices, and that was also part of their value system of who they were.
Yeah, I'm going to read something that I just pulled up also. I just put into Claude, ancient Rome brothel on streets all over, and it says the following. It was illegal and widespread and not hidden away. Prostitution in ancient Rome was legal, taxed, and recognized as a formal profession. Unlike a modern assumption that would have been tucked into back alleys, brothels in Rome were often prominent, well-known establishments strategically located in bustling city centers, easily recognizable by distinctive signage, and frequented by people from all walks of life. The Roman poet Martial described them as open to all the winds, emphasizing how accessible and undiscriminating they were.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to understand that when Chachamim are coming with this Midrash, and as well as others, of course, they're saying it within their own time and context and history, as well as the few deep messages that we just touched upon, which leads me to another Midrash. Okay. This Midrash comes from Midrash Rabbah, and it's in last week's parasha of Balak, at the end.
So what happened at the end there?
Happened in the end is the following. The Jewish people were in the outskirts of Midian, Moab area.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens to be that suddenly they felt the need or fell into the temptation of the daughters of Moab, the Moabite women, which led to them having relations with them when they're not allowed to, as well as leading them also to worship their main deity called Peor, Baal Peor. All right? Which led eventually to the head of the tribe of Shimon, Zimri, took the daughter, the princess, the daughter of the king of Moab, and had relations with her in his tent, and then Pinehas saw what the heck is going on.
Not as publicly.
Publicly, and eventually it's inside the tent.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a plague going on at the same time. And Pinehas takes a spear, goes inside the tent, and he just spears both of them, and the plague stops. There were 24,000 people who died because of the plague, and eventually Pinehas is recognized by God that he is the one who had the courage, and he's a Kohen, by the way. Mm-hmm. He is the one who had the courage to do the right thing, whereas the court and even Moshe didn't know what to do anymore, mm-hmm. because it was totally out of control. Okay, now I'm going to read a Midrash, which is absolutely one of the most amazing Midrashim. It really, really is. So let's see how the Chachamim build this. And bringing it back to what we're talking about, the ethos of a people. Who are they? Who are these? Who are the people that we encounter? How do we know? Every people have good and bad things in it. Yeah, but when you say the bad things in it, to what extent? Because when the Chachamim tell you the whole thing, those three horrible transgressions of murder, killing indiscriminately, okay, sexual immorality, and stealing. These three fundamental prohibitions are the key to any society who wants any stability in it. Without those three core elements, you cannot even build a justice system on.
גילוי עריות, שפיכות דמים, and עבודה זרה.
No.
Not عبودة.
Theft.
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 For ייהרג ואל יעבור, it's...
Not for us. I'm talking about
what?
standard society.
Oh, okay.
Standard
Okay,
society.
okay. I misunderstood. Okay.
As well as our society.
Sure.
As well as our society.
Like those are the basics of the basics.
Those are the basics of all the basics.
Sure. Okay.
Really, they really are. If you really break things down to the raw element of what makes a society function, and there's no insanity and purging and things that are like, this is out of control, right? Those three things. Really.
Okay. Yeah, we can, I'll let you read the Midrash first, and then I think it's diving into each one of them and what the antithesis is for each. So that, because I think it's an idea worth fleshing out more.
Okay, so
Bechavot, take it away.
it tells us, Vayachal ha'am lizot el benot Moab. And the people, the nation, started to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab. Keep in mind, it didn't say Moaviot, it didn't say the Moabite women. No. On purpose, the Torah tells you what? The daughters of Moab. Telling you what? That culture grooms their daughters to be harlots. That is not that uncommon, I'm sorry to say. We're living in times today where the word decency doesn't exist anymore. The way, unfortunately, young girls, young women behave, it's even how they talk. There's no shame anymore to speak in a vulgar way, or even to dress in a way that this is so indecent. There's no decency anymore.
It's provocative.
It's beyond provocative anymore, and unfortunately, it's as if it's totally fine. There's no shame anymore. So what happened to your own dignity, self-dignity, self-respect? Out the window. This is the pop culture of the times that we're living in, unfortunately. It's a problem. Chachamim come with an amazing statement. Okay? And they say the following. Anytime that there's harlotry and sexual temptation going on, the Jewish people messed up. They messed up. It's one of the hardest things, okay, for the Jewish people as a nation to stay away from. Now, of course, it's the most powerful drive that we have. It's sometimes even off, especially among men. This is mainly about men. That drive, if it's turned on, completely overtakes the drive to even eat. To eat if you're hungry, it overtakes it. Okay, because it has to do with reproduction, it has to do with survival. That is strictly impulsive survival mode. There is, when it comes to that drive, logic, reason, clarity doesn't even exist, because that part of the brain, that front lobe, is shut. It's shut. It's not there. It's not on when we're having those relations. It's off. That is why people are not careful, do disgusting things, horrible things. Like, how can a human being do this? Well, human being has the frontal lobe judgment and reason, and when it's off, man. It's totally primal. So Chachamim tell us that, yeah, they messed up. They bring another pasuk when it says, "Vahi ha'am ki mit'onenim buchim lemishpechotehem," in Behalotecha, the Parashat Behalotecha, when the people were complaining and all that, and they were crying in their tents. Chachamim say they were crying that they were not able to have relations among themselves. Mishpechotehem, yeah. Where, you can't just physically be with anybody you want, within your own family even. You can't do that. So they bring that, okay? And they also bring this whole thing of Moab. They bring what happened between Lot and his two daughters, okay? Because one of them was the Avi Moab, right?
Right.
Ammon and Moab.
Ammon and
One was the mother, the matriarch of the Moabites.
Mm-hmm.
So because that was incestual, and that is the most horrific sexual thing to do, is something incestual. It's like the worst of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring that also, the connection between the two. That their daughters were this way. Why? Because their matriarch also was this way. Again, it leads to the values that they didn't change.
Meaning it was to them it was justified to behave this way because
It was totally fine and normal.
their matriarch.
It was totally fine with them. It was normal for them. They didn't see a problem with it even. This tells you something again. The way we view the world has to do with the value system that we have. If you don't have a problem with taking people's things or abusing other people, you're not even going to think if it's right or wrong what I'm doing. It's going to come natural to you. I'll give you another horrible example that we're living in today. The children that were, for the past 20 years and more, okay, the generation that was brought up in Gaza, who were taught in their nursery schools about killing Israeli soldiers and Israeli citizens in their own theater. They made theater, children theater, their Sesame Street, their Mickey Mouse. That's how they're raised. That's how they're. They don't see anything wrong with that. If anything, that's what I need to do.
It's praiseworthy.
I'll be a shaheed. I'll be a martyr. So that has to be good. Nothing's changed. I keep saying this, by the way, in my classes and in the podcast. Our behavior, right, didn't change. There's a reason why God gave us the Torah. At that time, we were the only audience who could capture His word. Because we had the value system that stemmed from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that is who we are today. With all our faults, we're not perfect, because they were not perfect either. Mm-hmm. With all our misgivings, still, our core value system is we do this thing and we definitely don't do these things. Okay? I don't care about exceptions. I don't care about individuals, but as a nation, this is who we are. So, and then they bring a pasuk which is interesting because it tells us that the people started to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab, and then it tells us right after it tells us that they
start worshiping.
They called upon the people to offer sacrifices to their God, and it tells us that right after that the people attached themselves to the god Baal Peor, to the god Peor.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where things get. So there's a sequence of things. One thing, listen to that. Immorality breeds immorality. It starts with sexuality, which eventually goes to worship, a ritual, a sacrificial worship, which eventually leads to accepting the God, the pagan God, which is basically I'm accepting the value system of that God.
It's just like avera gored avera.
Yes, one transgression leads to another transgression. Yeah, because it's a pattern. It's a pattern. Look at it today. People are engaged in immorality. Continue immorality.
It's easy. It's easy. It's so easy. Why shouldn't they change? Why should they change at all?
People who are engaged in good continue to, it's easy for them to do good. It's a pattern.
Yeah.
We are an organism of habit. Habit is pattern. This is it. What's teshuvah? Break that pattern. It's no good for you.
Right. So with this, it goes from immoral relations to worship, to acceptance of the deity. So why is there a specific reason why it's that sequence?
Yes.
Because you would think
You
would think the inverse. Like first, let me accept their God, and then I'll do the rest of it afterwards because I'm in it.
I'll tell you why. Because the first one, sexuality, feeds into the primal instincts of every human beings, of males, and it's easy to seduce men when it comes to sexuality. The majority of commercials for decades already contain sexuality. Even though, what does a car have to do in that? What does an orange juice or what does a beer have anything to do with women with bikinis? What does it have to do with one another? Oh, it's that. If I do that, I'll get that sensation. I'll get that feeling. It's an escapism in order for me to have that indulgence.
It's a fantasy.
It's a fantasy.
So by getting someone to indulge, first fantasize, and then indulge into the fantasy, it's the gateway into the next.
Yes, because when it comes to Avodah Zarah, yes, there's the practice, but the acceptance is already here.
So it requires, so when you get the person into it impulsively, okay, I did one thing. It's like, I did one thing. It's the logical.
They fell to the trap.
Right. So the logical conclusion, it just, okay, I'm already in it. Whatever. I already started. Might as well finish. You know what I mean? Rather than like, oh wait, what did I just do? I have to mess up. I have to do shuvah, blah blah blah. No. I'll just continue going with the current of it.
Most temptations and most addictions never come to us, and we never accept it if it's the core, the big one. It's usually something minor. And this is exactly what God tells us in Bereshit. When it comes to the Nahash, when it comes to the so-called Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination, that it'll creep up on you. It's just going to creep up.
It's crouching at the door.
Yeah, crouching at the door. It's right. It's not in your face. In your face, like, whoa. Now this Midrash is going to really exemplify this.
Right. It's like, just to go on that point also, to emphasize it more, it's like when you find yourselves in certain environments, I'm never going to be that guy. I'm never going to do this.
You can never say that.
Right?
We don't know.
Because it just takes one. One small action, and then it just spirals.
In circumstances.
Yeah.
And how is your day going? I don't know. If I'm having a bad day, I might succumb to it. I don't know. So it tells us that Chachamim tell us that they followed the advice of Bil'am. Meaning Balak asked Bil'am, Bil'am told him, let me tell you what's going to happen to you down the road. And Bil'am, the Chachamim make a Midrash saying that, let me tell you how you're able to destroy them. Their God does not like harlotry.
So he figured, so to speak, Bil'am figured out after so to speak blessing the people, he figured it out.
As if, right?
Yeah,
because hen ha'ilu b'nei Israel bidvar Bil'am limsor ma'al balunai al devar Peor. In other words, the reason why the plague happened is because they did what Bil'am, the advice that Bil'am gave to Balak, in order to go against what God said when he came to Baal Peor. In other words, that they worshipped idolatry, but it was really the sexual act that began. So let's see, how did it happen? The Moabites, asu lahem kela'im ve'oshiv bahem zonot. The Moabites, what did they do? They made, in their own camp, in their own area, tents, a marketplace that was made from tents, ve'oshiu bahem zonot, and inside there were prostitutes. Uvidehen kol kele chemda. And what did they have? They had all types of nice houseware, all types of kelim, all types of utensils that were, this is very nice, in their marketplace. Who, again? The zonot, the prostitutes. Interesting, no mention of men. Keep in mind, a shuk, till today, right? An Arab shuk, it's a place for men. You don't see women there. You don't see women selling stuff. And in general, right? Definitely in the old country, only men went to the shuk. Not only as merchants, but also to buy. Women in general rarely ever went to the shuk, to the marketplace. Because that was a place where men behaved like men. Not nice.
So the fact that the zonot were there
On purpose.
right? They're like the salespeople.
Yes. Perfect. Yes. Okay. והייתה זקנה יושבת מבחוץ ומסרסרת לילדה. There was an older woman who sat outside and she would pimp the younger woman who was inside. Okay? Why do they say zekena? Oh, because they taught them that. That's their culture. They educated them to be harlots. That is totally fine. Because the zekena was also, one time she was a harlot.
Yeah.
But they taught their younger generation also to be. All right? And to pimp her.
That's crazy.
How to entice. They taught them.
That's
שהייתה לפנים מן החנות. Who was the young girl? The young girl was inside. כשישראל עוברים ליטול חפץ בשוק, when the Israelites would pass by in order to buy things from the shuk, the market, זקנה אומרת לו, the older lady was telling him, בחור, young man, see? אתה רוצה כלי פשטן? Would you like to buy a nice garment? How do you say pishtan? I forgot.
Linen?
Linen? No, that's linen.
Linen or wool? No. Pishtin is not linen?
Pishtan? Linen? Like, I forgot how to translate pishtan. Okay.
Yeah,
You want to buy a very nice garment. Sheba mi Bet Shan. That comes from Bet Shan.
Yeah, yes, linen.
Linen, okay,
Yeah.
linen that comes from Bet Shan. That's bizarre. Why is that even bizarre?
What's Bet Shan?
Bet Shan is Israel. It's Canaan.
It's in the big yeah. I've been there. Been there before. There was amazing excavation that's been going on there where they found a shuk there, for example, and they show like they're able to map out exactly where the brothel was in that shuk. Fun fact. But yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Right? Now, in general, linen was something that the Egyptians wore. The Semitic people did not wear linen. They wore temer,
Wool.
They were different. Oh, but this is exotic. Oh, also, this will remind me how, we used to also be in Egypt, dress also in Egypt.
Which is funny
It's
because
enticing.
it's enticing, but on that point, this is after 40 years.
Yes.
So funny enough, it's the new generation, like the nostalgia of my
Nostalgia,
parents
very
and my
nice.
grandparents.
I like that.
Yeah.
והייתה מראה לו ואומרת לו, she would show him the garments and telling him, היכנס לפנים, come inside, ותראה חפצים נאים, and you'll see even nicer merchandise. Okay? Of course, she wants to bring him in. The whole idea is to entrap, to lure. That is the pagan way.
This is salespeople. Is it not?
Yeah. But what is she selling? Harlotry. Harlotry.
Sure.
So we have to understand that when it comes to these things, temptation, it's all about entrapment and to lure.
And it's chipping away.
Yeah.
It's because you start strong, right?
Oh, he's naive.
Naive.
Oh, yeah, sure, why not? Blah, blah, blah.
That, but like when you're walking, typically when you walk into a place, your guard's pretty on usually because you don't really know where you're going into. You don't know what to say. And then once the interaction starts, then slowly your armor starts chipping away.
Especially if it's an older woman.
Because he's
Zakena,
vulnerable.
She has,
What's she gonna do?
She has no, ulterior motive. I'm a young man. I'm not interested in her.
Yeah.
הזקנה אומרת לו, היכנס לפנים ותראה, חסינים, come inside, I'm going to show you some really nice merchandise. הזקנה אומרת לו ביותר. In other words, the זקנה would tell him, this is $100. וילדה, and the girl, בפחות. She would tell him, no, come to me and I'll give it to you for $50. Again, entrapment.
It's a sweet deal.
Mikan ve'elach omrit la'yalda. From that point onwards, of course, he's going to go to the younger sales lady, and she tells him, "Hare ata keven bayit." You're like family here. This is your home. You're like, we're like kin. Ben bayit. Shev, beru la'atzmecha. Sit and sift through whichever one you want.
Choose. Take your pick of the litter.
Sit. And everything. Look at the way Hachamim are using the Midrash in order to tell us how we are lured easily with words, with verbs, description. V'tzartzur yen amuni munach etzlah. And she had a little jug of wine, amuni. That type of wine, Chachamim tell us, was a very strong wine. That the alcohol level was very high, and that it would really heat up the body of the person. V'adayin lo ne'esar yenam shel goyim. And at that point, the wine of the non-Jews, that was regular wine, not for pagan ritual, was it to be prohibited. That's later on.
That is so funny. That is so funny. Oh my God.
I love how Chachamim are honest. Yeah. Ve'na'ara yotzet mekushetet, and then the girl would come out. She would see he's sitting down, he's taking care of, he's looking throughout the merchandise. Meanwhile, she starts to decorate herself nicely. Umvusemet, she puts nice perfume on her. Umfatauto, and she starts to seduce him and tells him. By the way, he's already drinking some wine, a little wine maybe.
Yeah,
he's not having wine yet.
He's not under the influence, but it's been offered to him at this point.
It's there.
Sure. Yeah.
He sees, and she tells him, "Lama anu ohavim etchem ve'atem sonim otanu." What a line! Why is it that we love you but you hate us?
Guilt.
Of course.
Guilt. Yeah.
Tolecha keli ze chinam. You want to see how much I love you? Take this garment that you like, take it for free. You see how much I love you? Halo kulanu bnei ish echad. Isn't it true that we all come from one man, bnei Terach? Right. The sons of Terach, Avi Avraham.
Right. This is what it says in Parashat Bereshit. I have the reference here. The pasuk is when
it gives the genealogy of Terach.
In Parashat Mikeh, no, the pasuk is in Bereshit when Yosef is accusing the brothers of being spies, and the brothers say, no, we're all the sons of the same man. Like they're just using it as a reference.
But they're using this also as a reference that Moab, who come from Lot, we're cousins.
Right, that's what the Chachamim are using it for.
Yeah, we're cousins. We're cousins. What are you talking about? We came from Terach.
We're family.
We're family.
Right.
How come you dislike us?
Which is funny because, again, the irony of that it's the family and the incest part as well. And
it's the family. It's the kinship. It's kinship.
Sure. Okay.
And atem rotzim le'echol mizivchotenu umibishulenu. Don't you want to eat from our sacrifices and from our
slaughter,
from our bishul, from our cooking, from our food? Hare lecha agalim v'tarnegolim. We have agalim, we have galim, we have calves, we have chickens. Shachatuk mitzvatchem veichlu. Slaughter them according to your law, and you can eat.
No, but that's the crazy part too. According to your law, as if she's saying,
it's all about enticement. Miyad mashkato hayayin. Right away, she gives him some wine. Uvo'er bo hasatan, and suddenly the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, that sexual impulse suddenly starts to engulf. Vaya niste acharea, and then he started to really desire her, right? Deviate to her. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says in Hosea, zenut v'yain v'tirosh yikach lev. Harlotry, wine, and young wine.
It says new wine.
New wine. Yeah. Yikach lev, the heart is going to take. In other words,
capture the heart.
Capture. It's something that the heart wants, that our evil inclination, wants. And then side note, and some say, Bil'am tziva otam shelo lashkotam. Bil'am actually told the Moabites, don't give them wine. Why? Shelo yidonu kishtuye yain ela kemizidim. In order for them not to be judged by God as if they're drunk, but in order for them to be judged as they did this on purpose. Okay, it's like a side note, and it's a great one.
That's a great point.
Okay, goes back to the story. Kevan shayat tov'ah. Okay, and thus because he started to desire her. Tov'ah basically says to her explicitly, I want X, Y, and Z.
I want you. Yeah, I want. Yeah.
Omeret lo. She tells him, שחט את התרנגול הזה ונבשל ונאכל עמך. Kill this chicken, we'll cook it, and we'll eat it together. Right? Because Semitic people and ancient people, till today, it's still remnants of this. Whenever we eat together, it's as if we're bonding. Uvrishutcha ani. You do this, and I am yours. You can do whatever you want to me. Kesheba lishchot, when he comes to slaughter, omeret lo. Hold on a second. Eni nishmat lecha. I'm not yours yet. Ad shetishhatenu leze lif'or v'tishchavelo. Until you will slaughter that chicken in front of Peor, the god Peor, and bow down to it. Now keep in mind, he's all, you know what?
He's revved up.
Yeah. She got him, so he's going to do anything. V'hu omer, he says, la'avodah zarah ani mishtachaveh. I'm not bowing down to avodah zarah. V'omeret lo, she tells him, en ata ela kimgaleh atzmecha. What do you need to do? You're not really bowing. All you need to do is expose yourself to Peor.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get back to what that means in a second. V'hu nisteh hareya ve'oseh ken. And he clearly is, desires her so much, and he does so. He slaughters to Peor, and he eats with her, v'nitzmad immah, and he connects with her. He bonds with her.
Right.
Zohi shemru hachamim. This is what hachamim say. Hapoer atzmo leBaal Peor, zohi avodato. Whoever exposes themselves to Baal Peor, that is that type of worship. That is how that deity was worshipped. And then it goes back to the pasuk that they ate from their sacrifices to their gods. They ate with them, and they bowed down to their God. And Israel, the Jewish people, clinged to Baal Peor. And the word litzamed, interestingly enough, comes also from the word tzemidim. It's like having like bangles that are on you, like this. It's like, not like it's around you.
Oh, like
it's around you. It's like it entrapped you in a sense.
Yeah.
So where am I going with this? A side note of Baal Peor.
Yeah.
Chachamim tell us whether or not they knew this for sure, that's not the point. They say that in the worship of this Baal Peor was that a person would expose his rear to the deity and defecate in front of it. I don't want to be too graphic, but I need to. And then those who wanted to show real devotion, they would clean the area where they defecated from their body on the nose of Baal Peor.
Ooh. Yeah.
Okay? As if, we're mahmir.
very, very devout.
Stringent, yes.
They're very stringent, yes.
Yes, the true worshippers.
Yes.
Now, what is this? Okay?
Yeah.
Of course, the Torah doesn't say this. Okay? Chachamim say this. Let's assume that there was a type of a worship that you would do something that had to do with a person's feces.
Sure.
Based on what I've read, the Semitic religious stuff, and what I've seen lately, I saw this something 3 years ago when Imam we went to Spain, in Barcelona. There was a store. I sent you a picture of this.
I remember this.
There was a store.
Yeah.
It was a feces store, not real.
Yeah.
But depicting feces and characters of all different people, celebrities, where it is, they are squatting and they have their feces there, and it's something that the Spaniard people, Barcelonian people, view that this is for good luck. And it's on a log. And they specifically buy these things during Christmas time also. Why? Because, they said this brings luck, it brings a blessing to the forests and the wood and all that. So what's the connection? I see this. Feces is fertilizer.
Right.
So if this Baal Peor, Chachamim say, was worshipped in that way, there was basically depicting the fact that he was the God who fertilized the land that he was the owner of. Baal, quote unquote, there was all different Baal X, Y, and Z, A, B, Aleph, Bet, whatever you want. He's the Baal of what? He is the owner of a territory where their people lived in. He's the Baal. So he's the master. He is the Lord over this territory. And we're going to worship him the way we view who he is to us. Okay? So it seems to be, if Chachamim, if we take Chachamim, their word, as that type of description, then it makes sense that they worship Baal Peor in the sense that he is the God who fertilizes the land through feces, whereas other Baals would be the fertile of the land with rain and dew. It all had to do with what is the land going to give me, because that's their sustenance as well as their economy. It went hand in hand. Right? They're always dependent on it. What am I getting with all this? Chachamim again are saying about this, about the Romans also. The Jewish people living under the Romans were very much enticed by them. Their power, economy, their mannerisms, their indulgence, and there was a lot of assimilation going on. We fought the Greeks to a point, but later on when Rome came after the Greeks, especially towards the end of during that period of the end of the second temple, first century, second century, that's why you have many gezerot, many new rabbinic prohibitions that all have to do with how we're going to keep distance from the goyim. This was a big problem. There was assimilation, there was intermarriage, and we were losing. So Chachamim are telling us in their own way, be careful from them. Their value system really does not coincide with ours when it comes to the moral behavior. We can be cordial, but that's it. We're not supposed to even take bread from a non-Jewish neighbor. Why? Because when you take bread, he's going to want your bread. You're going to get together. You're going to eat together. We have a bond. Families, children. There's many things. The Chachamim say, distance. It can be friendly, but a distance. It was a big concern. It was a big problem. So, again, of course, they're using the Pesukim and they're creating a fascinating narrative of what happened to the Jewish people back then, that it can definitely happen. It happened during their time, and it definitely can happen at any time when we're among non-Jewish people who do not have and do not share the same value systems as us, as the basic ones. The basic ones of, we have morality among each other. We do not have sexual perversion. We don't accept this. We have a way of behaving. Our families are sacred. All those things are great. And there are many non-Jewish people who have those core values. Core. However, there are many others who do not have those core values and allow their children to behave in a very lewd way. You go to university campuses and some of the big ones in our country, unfortunately, it's an orgy. It's a total immorality. They promote it. It's promoted. what's going on here? Aren't universities supposed to be places of wisdom? What happened? Out the window. If anything, it's a place of looseness and lewdness. That conflicts. So we need to be very careful, because most people fail when it comes to that drive that we have. Rambam says, and he says that the illnesses that he would try to heal, the majority of them had to do with sexuality. STDs. And even Chachamim tell us that most people fail when it comes to arayot, when it comes to the prohibitions that we're not allowed to have with certain people. Chachamim say this. More than this, they say that during Yom Kippur, they say that Yom Kippur, why is it that we read in Mincha of Yom Kippur, the section of the Torah, we read the prohibitions, the sexual prohibitions? Chachamim say because most people fail in them. We didn't read, we read in Shahrit the whole services of Yom Kippur that the Kohen did. Mincha, we read the prohibitions of sexuality. What does that? Yeah, Chachamim tell us because the people need to hear. Because most we fail as a society. We fail, and if we don't fail, we're very tempted by those things.
It never stops.
Yeah.
It never ends.
Yeah.
And especially now, we're living in a day and age where it's amplified more and more.
More, and there's no
embarrassment. I think embarrassment. Yeah.
People are not embarrassed anymore. There's no usul, like we say in Arabic. Usul, like properness. There's a certain thing. Etiquette. Be proper. So yeah, we need to be careful. I'm not saying that we should blind ourselves. I'm not saying that we should be with blinders and not say, interact and be polite. But we just need to be careful. We need to be careful in these things and be aware of it. And again, people's behaviors is based on the ethos and the cultures that they have, that they received.
So
this is key, and this is, I think, where this whole thing is coming into an end.
Right. I mean, to really tie on it, it sounds like what you're saying also is that America has deviated from its founding principles. And as a result, we're seeing it trickle down and trickle out in all areas of life where it's affecting it.
It's affecting it not only in the moral code, but now lately, definitely in the political and economical code, that people are gravitating to socialism. I read a poll this week that was done by a media outlet that I think maybe 10 years ago, only 50% of Democrats favored socialism. Now it's 68%. Are you kidding? I happen to think that the majority of them don't know what socialism really is. They don't know. They really don't know what it is. Any person, any migrant who came to this country from a communist or even a socialist country, they'd be horrified. They're horrified. They say, these people don't know what it is to live under it. It's all these promises that are empty promises. They're not real. They're not. When you have, here in the past few elections and then local elections, you have in New York, you have in Maine, and a couple of other states that in Seattle, they voted for people who are openly socialists. People would never say something like this 20 years ago. Now, no, Chavod, say it. You'll get the votes. You have people who in Congress people, senators, socialists. We're losing our values. We're losing it. And it's and a lot of they use a very basic vice that we humans have, envy. They're using envy as also one of the tools in order for people to dislike those who have and say, oh, I want what they have. And if this guy promises me that, I'll vote for that person.
Go back to Lotignov?
Of course it's Lotignov. It's
back,
stealing.
Go back to that principle, though.
It's stealing. Like, you want to have this country has the most opportunities today as well, in order to raise your level of living, raise yourself from nothing to something. By all means, you can do it in this country. How often do you hear people who went penniless, literally penniless, to I don't know, to France, and they became bold billionaires? You rarely hear this. Here, how many people came here with nothing and they became wealthy? Forget billionaires. Very wealthy, very settled, or let's say they are very successful in their businesses. Like very. Here, it's every other story. Not only Jews, so many people.
Yeah.
Really, so many people. So to lift ourselves up, yeah, you got to work hard. You got to put in the time. You got to be reliable. You got to be responsible. Those are the values of America.
So if you were to advise America, like America comes to you for advice and says we're facing this crisis. What do we do about it? What would you say?
Education. Our education system is bankrupt.
So what specifically about education would you change so that things will have an impact?
In middle school and in high school, the fundamentals of America must be emphasized throughout all the grades, from 6th grade to 12th grade. The Constitution needs to be read, studied critically, understood in all the different levels. The Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the amazing history of America. Yes, with our faults. Our faults are not what is defining us. That's the problem of today. Those individuals who want to have this socialist country and get rid of the Constitution, they are identifying America. The evils of America is who America is. That's not who America is. No. The success of America, the opportunities and freedoms that America gave to anyone who walked in here, who came here, that is who we are.
Right.
Yes, we made mistakes. What country did? What you made? You don't make mistakes in your home. You don't discriminate in your own home. Stop it. As a system, a justice system, as opportunities, as learning from our wrongs. That's what we need to focus on.
Right.
They don't, with those individuals who want to, again, the 1619 project, all this, they don't want to tell them the truth. Because the truth of the matter is, the whole trade, slave trade, right, was not unique to Africa. Again, it was all over the world, by the way, for thousands and thousands of years, till today. By the way, Africa today is the continent of slave trade, till today. Trade and slavery, till today. Again, ethos. Okay. What was the purpose of the slave trade? Economics. I need labor. Nothing to do with racism. Who sold the slaves who came to this country? The African people themselves. Either these individuals, the slaves that were bought, right, were either captures of war, okay, they were, or within their own tribes, like the nishich, the nothings,
Yeah.
sell them, get some gold, get some silver, get whatever utensils, and have a good day. That's what it was. Was it wrong? Absolutely it's wrong. Yes, it is wrong. But that is not the essence of America. No. That, unfortunately, is they're teaching that evil side to be our identity in the schools, in universities. And then people buy it. Say, yeah. Well, no. No. That is going to be our downfall. Really, it's very, very concerning. The education is not good. You know, and sometimes people who speak about it and go against the so-called current, they're ostracized as usual, because that is the tactics of socialists and communists in order to silence the other any way possible if they don't agree with the agenda, right? So hopefully, Behemet, God will continue to protect this country. God will continue to really shower His abundance, His grace and chesed, kindness to this country. We always pray on a weekly basis. We pray for the harmony and peace of the government, so they will treat us as well as others decent and fair, and not take advantage of us, as others did. And maybe we're going through a little dip, and hopefully maybe the country will say enough of this.
God willing.
And so we'll have another at least 200 more, 250 more years of
Amen. Inshallah. Listen,
this country.
Like you've said, this country has, yes, with all the ups and downs that Jews have had, it's overall the American experiment and how the Jews have interacted with it has been overall positive.
Yes.
And
yes.
how we've contributed back. We've given back to the American society as well, at large and on a smaller scale. And for us, I think that's the core.
Yeah.
While we're living in Galut, ultimately it's about trying to find and the gratitude and the appreciation for the host country. Sometimes it's not the greatest, but especially when things are stable, for the most part for us.
And that's why it's important that we also treat the non-Jews in this country in the right way. That's Kiddush Hashem.
Yeah.
We're never allowed to take advantage of another human being. We're not allowed to. We're not allowed to. I don't care what people think. No. We're never allowed to take advantage of another human being, because that's Chilul Hashem. We're not allowed to manipulate. We're not allowed to sketch. We're not allowed to lie. No, we're not allowed to. We're not allowed to. Because we are always scrutinized more than anybody else. Because they know we're the people of the book. They know that. So we need to be on a better behavior. If it means that I'm going to take a little loss because of it, take the loss. You'd rather lose some money than be losing God's name and desecrating God's name. That's a greater loss.
Yeah, that just requires a little more foresight, but yeah, for sure.
Foresight and honesty and thinking that your money doesn't belong to you. Your money is given to you by God. And at the end of the day, if you do it in an honest way, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, treating others kindly and nicely.
Yeah.
Amen.